Sherry Wyerka. I want to thank the board for the opportunity to present this budget tonight. So this is our Pupil Services budget proposed for the next school year, 2018-2019. I'm going to call out the slide numbers because I understand that the board members are flipping through this presentation as I go through it. So we're going to move to the next slide, number 2. And this gives you an overall view of the full Pupil Services budget, sort of a historical view, so you can see the actual expenses from 15-16 and 16-17, and then you can see what we have budgeted for this current year, 17-18, and what we're proposing for the 18-19 budget, which is an increase. You can see the amount increase there and then the percentage increase. Moving on to slide number 3. This is one of the areas of the budget, our regular education 1110 series, and these are the accounts that are underneath that budget: professional services, charter schools for regular education students, and our general supplies. So again, there is a historical overview for you: 15-16, 16-17 actuals, and then our 17-18 budget for this year, and then what we're proposing for next year. You'll see the variance there, and on the next slide we'll give you a little bit more detail to understand that variance. So moving to slide number 4, this is the detail and historical overview of these accounts. So you can see account 300 is professional services, account 500, again, charter school tuition for our regular education students, and that's where we're seeing a significant increase and why you see that variance proposed for next year. Okay, moving on to slide number 5. This is the special education, the largest portion of this budget, our 1200 series. And this shows you the accounts. We have our professional services that are listed there, repair and maintenance, our other purchase services, and this is where charter school tuition falls for our special education students, our supplies, equipment, and then the 800 series, which is claims judgments, and those are our settlement agreements that we enter into. Moving on to slide number 6, this just shows you all of the areas under special education where we put, where we have to budget money, all of the different disability areas for the students that we serve. Moving on to slide number 7, again, this is historical overview of special education 1200, actual expenses for 15-16, 16-17, and then you can see again this is our largest budget, what we budgeted for 17-18, and then what we're proposing for 18-19. And there you can see the variance, and we will show you on the next slide the detail that explains that variance. So on slide number 8, again, special education, this is broken down. And you can see for 18-19, under the 300 account, the variance there. And that is because of our IU costs, charter school costs, and students in alternative placements. And then under account 500, I'm sorry, that's where under account 500 is where our charter school and alternative education costs are going up for special education.
Can you just pause there for a second?
Sure.
I think you said on a different slide that the charter schools was like 200,000, so the other 200,000, if you broke that up, was alternative education?
That was under regular education.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, moving on to slide 9. This just continues with the accounts under special education, where we have our supplies, our equipment, and then the 800 account. These are our settlement agreements, again, broken out by year. Moving on to number 10, this is an historical overview of alternative education, the administration portion of that budget. This is a very small budget, and we have kept that the same, proposed the same moving forward. Slide 11 is the historical overview of our pupil personnel series, 2100. And this again shows you 15-16, 16-17 our actuals, 17-18 what we budgeted for this school year, and then what we're proposing for next school year. And the next slide will show you on slide 12, these are the employees that are in this budget, although their salaries and benefits are in the personnel budget. This budget, and you'll see on the next slide, for our guidance counselors, psychologists, social workers, student accounting, and staff that are serving students in the home. On the next slide, then that will show you on slide 13 their travel, the professional services and training that we budget for them, and then supplies, software, and licenses that are budgeted in there. Okay. Slide 14 is a continuation of pupil personnel and the detail there. Again, this is just equipment. That account is no longer used, the 700 account, and then the 800 account is a small amount for fees. Okay, on slide 15, this breaks down the 2300 series. This was a new account. I think previously these fees had been in different accounts, and now we've put them all under the 2300 series. So these are, again, our legal fees for any time we need to have an attorney supporting if we have a settlement or a due process. And you see some fluctuations here from year to year. It just depends on what sort of cases we're involved with. Okay, on page, slide 16, these are our pupil health services, the 2400 series. Here is the historical overview for 15-16 and 16-17 actual. And then 17-18 is what we have budgeted, and then what we're proposing for next year, 18-19. This gives you more detail for the pupil health services expenditures. Under 300 professional services, we have a small amount there. Equipment is not really used, and then insurance and travel, there's a small amount budgeted there. On slide 18, this continues with pupil health services. This is another area where we have equipment. You can see what we're proposing, and the, did I just do this one? I'm sorry. It's pretty similar to the previous slide. So you can see then 700 is no longer used, and then 800, we don't have anything budgeted in there. Okay, so taking us to slide 19, this is really the overview of the 18-19 proposed pupil services budget. All of the functions down the left-hand side are the specific budgets I just went through: regular education, special education, alternative ed, pupil personnel, legal fees, and pupil health. And there you can see our proposed budget for 18-19 and the variance in that budget. The previous slides showed you the detail of why we're seeing that increase in this budget. And then on slide 20, this is where we're showing additional programs or supports that we're proposing for next year. We're looking to start an autistic support classroom at the middle school level, which would involve one teacher and one teaching assistant, and then a special education classroom at the high school, which would involve one new teacher. Those staff are budgeted in the personnel budget for the 18-19 school year.
Is this a new class, the autistic class? Are you bringing kids back to the district?
Yes, the next slide will show you
Okay.
how that breakdown occurs. So the reason that we're starting that new classroom right here is reducing 3 students that are in outside placements, and then we're eliminating the need to place additional students in outside placements. So there's a savings there, which is more of an offset cost avoidance savings. If we didn't start this classroom and if we needed to place the students out, we'd be looking at additional costs in our IU line item, which is already up pretty high, and our out-of-district placement costs, which would have gone up if we wouldn't be starting this classroom at the middle school and then the classroom at the high school as well.
I'm sorry, one last question. The part-time learning support, that's a self-contained class at the high school?
Students will come and go as they need to,
Okay.
or if they're included, that teacher will check in with them. Yes. And then the final slide is our summary of our 18-19 proposed budget. There you can see the total budget, the overall increase, where we're showing that cost avoidance with starting the new classrooms. And then we just have a little bit of detail there about why the budget increase. Again, it's the increases in charter school tuition, enrollments and costs, increase in our BCIU tuition and services costs, slight increase in costs of materials and services. But then again, we're just showing there the 2 new special education classes. That staffing is added to the personnel budget, so you won't see that in here.
You have
Questions?
questions?
Just kind of stay with me here, I'm kind of want to work through this. So, the regular ed charter school is a $200,000 increase. This is not through, that's just by parent choice?
Yes,
Okay. Now, the special ed charter school, is that by parent choice or is that through settlements?
parent choice, those costs are parent choice. If it's a settlement, it would be shown under that settlement.
Under the settlement,
Mhm.
okay, okay. Because I went through your special ed report, and it said that you have a rather healthy number for the LREs, meaning our kids are staying in. So if that reduces our cost, I'm just curious as to why, but we have no control over these special ed charter schools, and is there a way to bring these kids back?
Yes, yes, and yes to both questions. The cost for charter schools, and Sean, if I don't explain this properly, you can help me, but there's a formula for what we have to pay when a student goes to a charter school, and we don't have control over that formula. So there's a specific formula for regular education students and then charter school, special education students, and that's set. We did start this year an in-house program that we're starting to bring students back, and we're starting to see some savings there. So we're hoping that, and I've been working closely with Dr. Kathy Brewster and her office, because if we have special education students, we're trying to figure out how we can bring them into our program and give them at the same time any special education support that they need to be successful in our cyber program. So we're hoping that we start to see those costs come
See
down.
those costs come back in. I wanted to add another question too. When Mrs. Cullen and I had talked to the teaching staff, what was it, last year? Yeah, like a year ago. And there were concerns because, our teachers are regular ed teachers and not have the training of a special ed teacher, and the emotional support kids are coming back. And there was some concern, and they were questioning the supports that would be available to them, and that's very understandable, and it'd be appropriate for our students to be supported if our teachers are supported. I mean, it's bound together there. So, but I saw your professional development go down. Did your cost go down for professional development? And that kind of concerns me for bringing kids back.
Can you direct me,
It was up in the 300s.
Slide 13.
which slide?
I believe
13?
13.
And that kind of concerns me a little bit because if we're bringing students back, our teachers need to be, receive training. And I understand that they meet with the special ed teachers. I understand all that. And they collaborate, I get that, but I still feel that they need some supports as well, some professional development to deal with these students that are in their class.
Right, so I'm looking at the 300 account, is that
Yeah.
the one? We've proposed 30,000 as opposed to the 30,350. And this is the training and support for the staff that are in that budget. So those are the guidance counselors, the psychologists,
Okay.
our social workers.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Okay.
So then what about the professional development for our teachers, then dealing with our students coming back into the classrooms, indoor schools? Is that in this budget, or would that be in another budget? Sean, maybe you can answer that question?
Let me just look.
It would be part of, this, the district-wide staff development days. So the programs would be developed, but also the expenditures for, under the special ed would be 1,200, 300. And that professional services line item is going up by 587,000. So there's a lot grouped in there, like the IU costs are grouped in there
Oh,
also,
yeah,
but,
right.
but there's not a,
It's not split out by professional development, okay. When I saw that go down, but I'm sorry, I didn't quite tweak that out. Yeah,
That's
that's why I
okay.
said I want you to kind of walk me through this. And one last question. Our IU costs are high, well, not high, but higher, and have increased. You know, in our approved private school costs for our students. But you're saying that there's a cost savings if we bring them back. But when we bring them back, we're hiring teachers, so then we're incurring that cost of retirement, healthcare. So is there a true savings to that, Mr. Dahlberg, of bringing them back, or is it?
yeah, since it's the IU has all those costs also that we have for our teachers. So we have retirement, healthcare, you know, pretty much at the same level.
Okay.
So we're able to you know, at the IU, you have the cost of the teacher and the other services, the administrative services at the IU, all part of that combination,
Okay.
calculation of what the cost is. So we're able to bring the teacher in, and oftentimes we're bringing in a new teacher.
A new teacher?
Oftentimes at a lower cost.
Correct, yeah.
And then we have the administrative people in place here already, and already,
Okay,
you know,
okay.
part of that equation, our own special ed supervisors.
I just want to make sure that's a true, you know, representation of savings. And honestly, I think our students belong back at Pennridge. I'm not saying they don't belong, but I just want to make sure that that's a true representation of savings. Okay, I think I've beat you up enough, thank you.
It's okay.
I've got a couple of questions. I guess the first is, and please forgive me, if there's some areas of this that aren't my expertise, so if I'm talking out of turn, just straighten me out. Mr. Dahlberg, when we talk about 17-18 budget, and we have numbers in here, we don't have actuals yet?
Correct.
And are we tracking to these numbers?
Yeah, we're tracking the actuals. We just looked at, yes, 2 days ago, we looked at the various numbers, or Dr. Orker's numbers through the end of March, and we were tracking,
Pretty much on par for where you expect to be?
even a little higher than what I would expect at this point.
Okay, because what concerned me with some of these variances is when you look back to the actuals that we had last. You know,
Yes.
the actuals, they're double-digit percentage increases.
You can see the actuals coming up. Also, the cost in this area is the major driving cost in public education everywhere. It's the needs of special education students, severe special education students, an overwhelming need for staff, number of teachers, limited number of children per teacher, number of support, extra additional support people for children. Many times, children need one-on-one support with above and beyond the teacher with aides. This is the area that we've seen in public education over the last 5 years exploding, and it's no different at Pennridge than it is anywhere else. It is a very difficult area to contain costs, and you know this is all IEP driven, and you know, children have needs, and you know we have to meet those needs in order to provide a free and appropriate public education to those students. So that's, and the charter school costs, again, charter school formula is in state law. We have no means to change that. We have no means to control if a student goes to a charter school or not. And we have no ability, once they get to the charter school, to fight a child that left here as regular education and all of a sudden becomes special education. And that cost goes from about $12,000 a year to $28,000 a year. And that could be for a child that needs a simple hour of speech support per week to a child that is a severe life skills student. It's $28,000 regardless of which child. So we see a lot of kids go out, leave regular ed, and all of a sudden they become special ed. They write an IEP, and away they go, and they start collecting a whole lot of money. And it is a constant struggle, and that's why, we're trying to start our own program, but even with that, we still can't force children to stay here into our program.
If I could just add to that, Dr. Scheid and Mrs. Carragher have had several nights for parents this school year where they have either been able to bring students back from charters or prevent students from going because of this CAP program that we have. So one of the things I will say, this number would be a lot higher had it not been for that. So we do have some cost avoidance in here because of that effort that they're making to bring them back but have them not go.
I just have one more question. I'm not sure who to direct this to, maybe Dr. Rattinger or Dr. Lawyer. Again, I was reading your special ed report online, and it says that we have participation in the IEP meetings, even if it's a charter school, is that correct? So don't we have some control? Did I not read that correctly? I thought that even though they were in a, maybe it's not a charter school, maybe it's in the, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We have participation if it's not in a charter school, because then they become the LEA for the student.
Okay, so it's in the approved private schools?
In other schools,
Okay,
yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, so, next question. Sorry. The increase to, this one right in, give me 1 second to back up. Under the special ed series, 1200 series, of 587,000 to the IU and contracted services, is that attributable to the increase in costs from the IU or the usage? Do we have, or a combination?
It's a combination. We're seeing students with more and more needs also. So the level of service or the additional services that they need goes up. So it might be that they are getting a classroom service, but then they need speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and for every additional support that they need, that's an additional cost. So we're seeing students with more severe needs and needing more level of service as well.
Okay. And the same applies for the 500 account, the charter school and alternative ed? There's a 388,000 increase there? Okay.
Yes, that's accurate.
Gotcha. And 1 moment. Legal fees. I'm struggling with the legal fees, as I always do. Lawyers are expensive. Is there any way to mitigate that or kind of control that?
Yes. We try to do that with training of our staff, so making sure that they are writing IEPs that have all of the components that they need to have in them, which is a difficult thing to do. Sometimes you miss one small requirement, and then that puts you in a position to have to defend an IEP. I see some head nods up there. So now, with me coming on board, I'm definitely watching that. I have access and I can see in real time our usage in all of these budgets where we're at. And I'm very involved in that legal piece. So as we're having communication with the attorney, I'm involved in that, and it's coming to me first. I'm not sure how it happened in the past, but those communications come to me first, and we try to solve that with the knowledge that we have in-house before I'll reach out to the attorney.
Can I jump onto that one real quick before you move on to the next one?
Okay.
I know in the past, there was a situation where the attorney would constantly call randomly, and I have a question about this, I have a question about this, and would rack up a lot of fees. And so at a certain point, they set up for this attorney to come in every week or every other week at this certain time, and that attorney had to save the questions until that day. So that way, they couldn't keep running up all of these fees. Is that still the procedure?
We have a regular meeting one time a month with the attorney who comes on site, and we review all of our cases. Since I've started, I have not seen that we're having a lot of that with the attorney calling us and asking questions. It's when we can't problem solve something and we need to reach out for that legal advice, so it's sort of happening the other way. But we save our questions, and when the attorney comes on site one time a month, we review all of our cases, and that's when we ask and answer most of the questions that we have, so it eliminates a lot of that back and forth.
And that's it for me too. So thank you very much.
I just want to comment on lawyer fees. Honestly, this is money well spent. These lawyer fees is money well spent, because these costs can be astronomical for any kind of settlement
We
and
miss it.
services and compensatory time, compensatory services, APS. So this is money well spent in my opinion.
The additional travel expenses, is that for sending people to out, is that because of all of our kids who are out of district that we have to send our staff to for these IEP meetings? Is that why that number is increasing, or what is the driving force of the travel expenses?
Can you direct me to a slide?
13?
Okay. Because I do know in one of the areas, we do have some increased expenses. Let me just look here. We have some increased travel expenses in the budget where we have homebound students or students getting instruction in the home. So if it's a medical reason, we have staff, tutors, and staff that have to go out and see that student in the home. So in that area, when I dug into this and looked at why our costs went up, in that area, that's one of the reasons.
Okay, you said one of the reasons, so is that like the biggest reason?
Yes.
Under the 800 account fees, slide 14, it looks like we weren't even using that account before. Did we just, and now we're using that account, or what is that for?
So this is, again, this relates back to the staffing on slide 12. Guidance counselors, psychologists, social workers. So if we have fees for, it could be that we need to maintain a membership for them. I think it's a rarely ever used account, but we put some money in there just in case we would have that need.
So you don't have any, you don't have a need at this point, it's in a case, is that?
Let me look back here. Yeah, I have to look into that because I don't know why. We don't have anything budgeted in 17-18, so I'm going to have to go into that and see if we have spent something this year, which is why we put that 500 in for next year. So I can look into that.
Okay, thanks. And then my last question, how do our numbers compare? Our numbers, I know you talked about the cost avoidance of bringing back kids for this one emotional support class, but I'm wondering how our numbers overall compare as far as how many kids we're sending out of the district, you know, last year to this year, the year before. Are our numbers going down as far as how many kids we're sending out of district versus meeting their needs here? And as far as the self-contained, pulling them out into other classes versus them being in a more inclusive setting, I'm wondering how those numbers are comparing this year to last year. And
That's data I would have to look at and get back to you.
okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions, Dr. Wayorka. And slide relating to charter schools. So on slide 4, right, the regular ed students charter school tuition, do you have numbers of students who are going and there was I'm just wondering, like 15, 16 and 16, 17, it was, the actual costs were stable, and then there's a jump in the current year and then another jump. So do we have numbers of students who are in charter schools this year and comparing it to last year?
We do have that data, but I have to get that. I don't have it with me tonight.
If you could send that out, I would appreciate it. And then on slide 8, I would like the same information for the charter schools and alternative ed, and just have some more information about the breakdown.
I would be interested in that as well. Could you send it to everybody?
Yes, thank you.
I know tonight you're presenting expenditures, but I think one of the things that should be noted at a meeting like this is the state support of special education, which has been basically flat for perhaps 2 decades. I realize there have been very small increases, but they're much smaller even than the regular education increases have been. And I think that certainly hurt all the school districts across the state in trying to support these students, because the $3 million more or less that we get from the state is what we got 10 years ago. And that's not very good, considering the fact that not only do we have somewhat higher incidence, at least in areas like autism, but obviously the costs have increased significantly over that period of time. So that's a hole in the budget, essentially, from our perspective.
Can I just ask one more question? On slide 17, 300 account of professional services, where we now have 2,000 and we didn't have anything in there before, is that for professional development?
That is if we need to consult with a doctor. So this is under the Pupil Health Services, and there are times that nursing staff, we need to reach out and consult with a doctor for assistance, and that's what that item is in there.
So do we, I guess I'm looking at prior years, and we don't have anything for this year. We don't have anything for 17, 18, or anything for 16, 17, and then the year before it was 635. So I'm wondering, do we have certain cases that there's an expectation, and that's why we now have that in there, or is that just in case?
That's a line item. It's similar to special education. You never know. Things fluctuate from one year to the next. So you might not have any students that you need to consult with, or we might have a couple of students that we need to consult with. So that's in case we have that need.
But I guess just looking at our history, if we haven't needed it for 2 years, and before that it was only 635, 2,000 just seems like a high just in case number, doesn't it?
Well, we have seen students with more significant medical needs coming to us, and I know we are using a lot more nursing services for those medical needs, so that would be why that amount was put in there.
So then do you expect, when you get the actuals in for this year, do you expect to see that 0 change?
I have to look and see what we've spent so far
Okay.
to see where we
Did
are
you get
on
that
track.
also?
Yes.
So just to confirm, this is what I thought too, you're basing this on, this prediction is based on your population that you know already is in our schools.
Yes, it's based on our best
Expected.
estimate
Right,
that
right,
the
right.
severity of medical needs has increased.
That's what I
Yes.
thought. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, Sean, can you just, normally, so you have like I guess when you and I talked about the different budgets that we were approving for different departments, you have conversations with each department and what they're approving, and part of the conversation is budgeting exactly what, like budgeting closer to what you need, because you will, you know, you're already budgeting those extra, you're already budgeting the just in case, right? So can't, you know, if we need more than what, you know, than what we're budgeting, you already have money to help out in those departments when that happens?
Well, we have a budgetary reserve that's a little less than 350,000. And that's a very small number compared to $135 million expenditure budget. So we have very little room for error in the budgetary reserve. So we don't have a lot of just in case, money set aside. But as we went over this budget with Dr. Royerka and also before that Dr. Foote and the staff, we went over just like we do every other principal or department head's budget, and every line item they had that increased, they had student names, and that's something that we won't talk about here in public, but student names, the services they need, and the costs. The number of students in charter schools this year, and the cost of the tuition for that. And I know these increases look, they look like extravagant, but there's data that they built this budget on to back those things up. And believe me, when we went into that meeting, Dr. Raddick and I went in, and Amelia and I went into that meeting thinking, well, we're going to cut this one. Look how high this came in. Everything they had was justified. So it was a very, and it's understandable based on the student population that we're budgeting for here. It's very understandable. The charter school formula is set by the state. And unfortunately, as our budget increases, for whatever reason, the charter schools get a raise. Because that dollar figure that they get per student is a direct formula from our budget numbers, and our expenditure numbers. So they get an automatic raise every year. The only way to stop that is if we pass the budget that had absolutely no dollar increase to it, which is not realistic for us. Just because the PSERS rate goes up, costs us an extra $1 million a year. Charter schools get a raise too. So it's very difficult to control those costs. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly, we have a little bit of money, go back to your original question with our budgetary reserve, but that's really not a lot.
Are there any other questions for me?
It's not, I know we're talking about the money, but I wanted to go back to what Ada was saying with the teachers, with the students coming back into the classroom and having a plan. And I don't know what meeting that would fit into, what committee meeting that would fit into, but if at some point you have the opportunity that you could show us maybe a sample plan of how you've prepared the teachers, the steps that you go through as you're bringing a student back into the classroom, I would appreciate seeing that.
Yes, I agree. I didn't know what committee as well, but also the supports that you have in place as well for the teacher, like the team, and how they interact and how they collaborate and how often. So we could even sit down with, I don't know, we could sit down as a person, I don't know, whatever you, I don't know who else wants to hear that, but I'd like to know that because that was a big concern, and we were trying to calm everybody,
It's a valid concern.
It is a valid concern.
Right, you want to be able to accommodate the students that are coming in, but in some cases, we heard that the students were coming in without warning,
Yes.
or very little preparation, and so I just want to make sure that that is something that's being addressed.
Because that will ensure the success of the program for students as well. Because if the teachers are on edge, that's not going to be conducive to learning or acceptance by their peers. So, we had concern about that, and we would like to, and we were in flux with, our pupil services director, so I would definitely like to hear that
That's
follow
right.
through.
Before your time.
Yes, yeah, right. And then we had, I would appreciate that. I mean, this isn't like an emergency.
No, I just thought
Because you've got all these budget issues too, and
I was
these
thinking
questions.
about it now, so I thought I would say it, and I know it's not.
Right, I agree, thank you.
And I can touch base with the two of you just to get a little more detail about the history, so I know what I can present
Okay.
and bring to you.
That would be great.
And if I could just give kudos to Dr. Woyerka, I want everybody just to keep in mind, she's only been here a little bit over a month.
I know.
And I think she's shown you that she has come up to speed pretty quickly, and I want to thank her, and also Dr. Demi Foote, who worked very diligently with her to make this a smooth transition. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you, Dr. Radigan, and thank you to the board for being understanding of that. But any questions that you have, we have the data, as Mr. Dahlberg said, and, you know, I can get any data point that you're looking for. Thanks.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, we'll move on to the second budget presentation.